representation, yeah, like an experience of something isn't the same thing as just like merely intending to do something.
But they're still thoughts. It doesn't matter like what you're going to do with them. The thoughts are actually occurring. It seems to be the same physical, or if you want to assert not physical thing, I go with the former, of course.
Yeah, sure, but I'm saying like there's different modes. There's different modes of intentionality. Like not all modes of intentionality are going to be cashed out the same way.
My point is that it doesn't matter what you do with these thoughts. It doesn't matter, the utility of them. It doesn't matter if you're just going to think it and do something with it, or think it and dismiss it. In any case, a thought is a thought. It doesn't really matter the context.
Yeah, but I'm saying, yeah, look, I get your point, but my point is like, even if you hold to this view, you can't defend it semantically. Like, there's like multiple problems in like hashing out mental states as being purely physical. If you think that for every like reference that's given for a mental state is like I don't know, a physical one, I'm saying that that's false. Unless if your like views on semantics are like radically different from most people, from how like most people are thinking about it. But I'm thinking about it in like a representationalist sense.
All right, let me ask you this then. You know my opinion. Thoughts are electrochemical reactions in the brain. What would be your idea of thoughts, like regarding mine? Like, are you adding or subtracting from what my position is?
No, I probably think they're the same thing as you think they are, like conceptually. Like, giving your definition, I probably agree with it.
Okay, then now I'm having a hard time understanding your further position.
I just think, yeah, my further point is like you have like unsupported, I think, very vastly underdetermined reasons to conclude physicalism. This brand of physicalism.
Mm-hmm. And you're stating that position based strictly on thoughts, right? Do you think that anything else in the universe is immaterial that exists besides thoughts?
I think, well, I don't think so. No, it's hard
Okay,
to
so
say.
all right, so it's just based on
I
thought.
don't think. I don't think like language. I don't think rules of language. I don't think they exist in some robust sense.
Okay, so then we're back to concepts, right? Which are still different types of thoughts, but
Yeah.
okay. And so I thought we kind of agreed that electrochemical reactions in the brain, you kind of went along with that, but are you like suggesting there's something immaterial having to do with these
No, I accept that they're neurocorrelates.
Mhm.
I accept that there's like a neurocorrelate thesis that has something going to it, but I disagree that there isn't a conceptual problem in the view that you're espousing.
And the reason is because you think there's a gap in our knowledge. No, you thought it was a different kind of gap, right?
A conceptual gap.
hmm
Yeah,
And
so
but
what's the response? Like the only thing that you said is, well, I don't see any empirical evidence, but that bringing up empirical evidence is irrelevant when you're bringing in a conceptual argument like this one. This is like an a priori issue. It's not an a posteriori issue.
well, the thing
What's the
is,
conceptual gap? I'm sorry, Strong. Could you just repeat what the conceptual gap is? I'm having a hell of a time following this argument.
Who was that to?
That was to live.
Yeah, I'm saying when I say conceptual gap, I'm saying like given how the terms are usually thought of, like given on the linguistic convention, the meaning of the terms that we're invoking and how we accept them. I'm saying that when people have like certain modes of thought and representation, they aren't strictly thinking about physical properties.
Okay, so that would be a problem with like an analytic model, right? That wouldn't be a problem with the actual ontologic explanation for the mind's function. It would just it would be a gap in the model, right?
It would be a gap in how you're using the underlying concepts, right, in order to flesh out how mental properties are physical, right? And you can't. My point is, you can't even go into the a posteriori stuff without the a priori stuff underlying it. So when strong atheist brings up empirical evidence, okay, great, we can. I'm sure there's like various models of, I don't know, neurocorrelation that are well supported, but you can't get off the ground if there's a conceptual problem underlying it all.
Okay, so if he was to offer you an explanation that would bridge that conceptual gap, what would it sound like?
That's a good question. He could say, he could hold to like a causal theory of reference. He could say, well, the reference that I'm applying to these metaphysical properties, these mental properties, are like causally assigned. There's like some causal history underlying them. And the causal history is interpreted in a physical way. I'm using a physical model to explain how I assigned those properties in the first place.
And so do you need a completely functioning and fleshed out model to have like inductive evidence for physicalism?
No, no, but he does have to adopt a certain view of reference to lay it out.
And you're saying,
Or else it wouldn't make sense, because when he's referring to physical properties, like if he doesn't have the reference fixed by something, then in virtue of what is there like an identity relation?
yeah, well, you said he would be fixing a reference, unless I'm misunderstanding you, would just be some sense perception of the outside world, because he could be aggregating automatically in his brain what identity is assigned to, just based on his perception, and that could be hard coded, right? And that he may not even be aware of it. In which case, it wouldn't be available to him to
Yeah, it
incorporate
could
into an
just be
explicit model, right?
it could just be another physical property or some object that he hasn't assigned onto his ontology, right? But the thing about reference fixing is what he's referring to when he says that these things are identical. That's what's being asked.
When he says what things are identical.
The mental states, like the qualia, the representation that an agent has, right? And the physical properties in the brain.
I say
Oh,
thought.
gotcha. Yeah, you're just saying how it would translate, right? Yeah. Because the electrochemical aspect of thought is itself just another abstract model, right?
Well,
Derived
when you say
from like
abstract,
EEG or fMRI. I mean, we're under determining for sure the actual brain function when we cite all these things, right?
yeah, well, it depends on what you mean by under determination. Like when I say reference fixing, I'm talking about what the sense is. What Okay, so there's like a difference between the sense, right? Like the intention behind the terms, and the extension, right? I'm saying that when strong atheist says that, okay, look, there's like these like neural correlates here, and we have like strong empirical evidence that suggests physicalism of the scientific kind, is still not explaining, under his view, what makes them co-refer, right? Unless if he's saying, okay, my sense of mental is just referring to the physical, just strictly speaking. But then there's like a question of, okay, are we using the semantics adequately? Like, are we using the semantics the same way?
Yeah, there
That's
could
my
be a
point.
failure. There could be a failure of semantics. I agree. We could be using the semantics differently, but if from his perspective, and I'm not trying to put any perception and any like opinion in Strong's mouth here, but if he was saying that we are the best references we have, the best empiric evidence we have is that it seems to be that mind and consciousness are purely physical things, and we demonstrate it to the best of our ability with coincidence detection of all these surrogates like EEG, fMRI, brain knockout studies, gene studies, all of these things that seem to affect brain function. And you're saying, but there is this one component where we have a semantic failure, where we're not adequately representing the perception, let's say qualia, for example. Because we have a semantic failure in how we describe that, therefore we need a non-physical explanation.
Not just a non-physical explanation. It's also it's not look. It's not just merely a semantic failure. The point of the Chalmers arguments, the point of the dualist arguments, are just to say, if representations as we understand them are like partly intentional, and intention means that they're about something, they have like some aboutness relation, then um, physical states, like natural states as we understand them, aren't typically about things. They're if in natural states, for example, they're objects in the causal history of the universe, right? So they're public in that sense. But as we're understanding phenomenal concepts are typically thought of as like being about certain modes of representation. And so the argument that I was bringing up to strong atheists is, if we understand the phenomenal concepts as being private, but the physical properties are public, then how are they identical? Like, how are they co-referential?
Yeah, I would just push back and just say it seems that that model of intentionality and categorizing things as private and public may not be adequate to explain the process. And I would just say the failure's in the model and not in the actual underlying assumption of physical mind. You're muted, I think, if you're trying to respond. Okay, he probably stepped away. Bottom line, I think this is a modeling failure.
Yeah, I'm back.
The way you're saying.
If somebody describes like a physical process and says, we're applying this model to describe this physical process, and it seems that there's an issue that we cannot bridge with this model, is the problem the physical process or is the problem the model? That's the question I'm essentially
No, the
getting at.
problem is the model. Like I
Yeah,
think
right.
like all theories, like when someone like physicalism and dualism are both like metaphysical theories. There are theories about like the nature of the mind. So when someone says that, okay, physical properties and mental properties are co-referential.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut out there. So when someone says that the physical and the mental are like co-referential, and they're trying to like describe these things in purely physical terms, they're still like, of course, using a model to do so. Now the question is, under his view, like what makes it so that the phenomenal concepts aren't representational? Because I think the only way to get out of these dualist arguments is just to like not assume that phenomenal concepts are about certain things, right? So, but strong atheist isn't saying that. Strong atheist is saying, no, these phenomenal concepts are about things. I'm just expressing it in a physical way given my model. But it's still like a failure within the model because there's like all these different problems about reference.
And if he pushed back and said that your criteria of being able to explain aboutness was unnecessary, what would you say?
He can say it, right? He could say, look, I'm not thinking about phenomenal concepts as being about things in the same way that intentional objects are, then that's fine. But then it's the question, okay, what does he mean by a phenomenal concept? Right? Like what's the model within, what's the criteria within the model that makes something a phenomenal concept?
And what if he said that an explicitly defined phenomenal concept was not a useful term in his model? What would you say?
Well, if it's not useful, then I don't think this is funny because if it's not useful, then how is he? I don't understand how you could be a physicalist and think that like phenomenal concepts aren't invoked in your ontology, unless if you want to say it's not useful to talk about them, but nevertheless I hold credence that they exist, which is kind of weird.
Well, I'm betting, I didn't catch the beginning of the conversation, but I'm betting Strong didn't couch his argument in the context of a phenomenal concept. I'm betting that you introduced that, but I could be wrong.
No. But the thing is, I strong atheist does think that there are concepts about experience, right? Like strong atheists, you would agree that there's like people can hold to concepts about experience, right? Like those
Sure.
exist under your view.
Yeah, it's just that the concepts are thoughts, and still gets back to
Yeah, that's all I mean by phenomenal concepts. Like that's it.
Yeah, and so a phenomenal concept could represent anything going from like a higher order math problem that you're solving explicitly in your mind, or the muscle activation pattern that your feet make when you learn to ride a bike with no awareness at all, right? Both of those would be phenomenal concepts.
Or the notions that you derive from just your experiences, like even sensations, right? Like if I have a bare sensation of spicy food and I categorize that as being like extremely hot for my taste buds, then yeah, that would be a phenomenal concept.
Great. Yeah. And if I did not have any higher order function and everything was lower order and it was all just muscle activation patterns, that would be a set of phenomenal concepts that those would count, right?
Yeah, those would count. Those would count. But the question is, what does he take them to be? Like, look, there's an ontological question what he takes them to be, and that's obvious because he takes them to be physical. But I'm just saying, like, what does he take them to be conceptually? Like, what is the when he says something is a phenomenal concept? Like, what is he meaning by it?
That's what I'm getting at. Let's just say that the phenomenal concept in this case is just a brain that's just optimized entirely just to move your feet to ride a bike. And then you ask, okay, so what do you take that phenomenal concept to be? And then I would respond, I don't have any use for describing this in the context of phenomenal concepts.
See, but once he does that, then he's an analytic naturalist. Once he does that, then he's just strictly defining the parameters of phenomenal concepts as being physical, right? He's no longer talking about like empirical methods determining whether or not this thing is actually physical. He's saying, no, given how I'm using the concept, it is physical. So he would
So,
have to change this. He would have to change his position.
so you're saying because he would be describing it, his position didn't actually change. You're just saying because he described it in that
No,
way,
it is changing. It is changing because there are physicalists, for example, that think phenomenal concepts don't strictly mean brain activity that release sensation from stimuli. There are physicalists who think the terms don't mean that. It's just given the things that we observe in the world, given like scientific inquiry, we can conclude that mental states are physical, right?
yeah, you lost me on that last distinction. I found that those two things could
So
coexist.
there's a difference between analytic and synthetic naturalists. Like the synthetic naturalists are the people who say, well, no, the mental and the physical, they're not conceptually the same thing. There's something in the world, there's something out there in the world that makes them the same thing, but it's not the semantics that does. It's, let's say, the metaphysics, the physical world out there makes them identical, which is funny to say because if it's all physical, then yeah, I mean, it's just another way of saying yeah, mental objects are included within the set of physical things. But analytic naturalists think no, they do mean the same thing.
Yeah, it may be too close to the neuroscience here, the science of like neural remodeling, plasticity, essentially memory formation and actual perception. And when we get into this many layers of analytics, it just starts to lose utility for me. To be totally honest, I'm not sure where to bridge this to reality anymore.
Yeah, well, you can say that, right? Like utility is a relative notion, right? Like what might be useful for your theory might not be useful for mine, right? But like the point is, like strong atheists either has to say they mean the same thing. Like when I say such and such is a phenomenal concept, it's also a physical property there. That's just what I mean by the term. Or it's not the case that they're meaning the same thing, but there's something out there in the world that makes it such, right? It's referring to some property out there in the world. He still needs to explain what property that is.
And
That's the dilemma.
if he gives you an explanation for that property, how would you propose testing that versus the not that?
When you say testing, are you saying empirically?
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think dualism is under the purview of like empirical methodology in the way that you're thinking of it.
Would it impact anything in reality that we can observe?
Um I don't when you say I don't well, in a predictive sense, I don't think it does. I don't think it generates novel predictions.
Then it is a
You know what I'm going
useless.
to say next then.
I don't think these views like dualism or idealism or it's I don't think they generate any predictions, at least not in predictions of the kind that you're thinking of. I don't think they do.
So is this just a thought exercise then that you're approaching it in this way?
It's not a thought exercise. It's still like it's still a question of like how he develops this model in order to explicate how they're identical. It's still like a legitimate question. It's not just like an
So you're begging the question then. You're saying it isn't identical. So how do you show that
it's not.
like you're not
But it's
providing
not
evidence
begging
for
the
your point?
question.
You're just
It's not begging the question because I didn't give out a premise that is parasitic on any conclusion of my argument. It's not begging the question.
No, it's not. It's just the way he's constructing the model. Random is that he's trying to construct a model from a top-down approach, whereas Strong's building it up from the bottom up, just based on incorporating empiric data to like further refine a model as more data presents itself. What Liv is proposing seems to be, and again, correct me, Liv, I'm not trying to speak for you. What he's proposing is that you actually have to have a complete, coherent analytic model before you can actually adjudicate the empiric data into a working
That's
model.
not also
right?
true because I don't think any of these theories are complete. Of what you mean by complete is that they can't be re-engineered in the future, like given new arguments, right? Like of course there's conceptual engineering of all kinds when it comes to this, but what's not clear is how Strong Atheist is building up his model without like giving an account as to how he's fleshing out phenomenal concepts. That's what I'm saying. It's like more a critique of model building than like the other claims that he's making within the model.
Is it a Strong, and this is, I'm going to bow out after this because I think I understand where Liv is coming from, but is it safe to say, Strong, that you are building a model bitwise using the empiric data that you have, chunk by chunk, and you're not adding on any components that cannot be tested until they prove themselves to be testable? Is that fair enough?
Sure. And what he's saying just now, though, is, concepts, once again, which I addressed earlier, are thoughts, which are electrochemical reactions. Even though thoughts are different, they're all thoughts, and they are all electrochemical reactions in the brain until you can show otherwise.
No, but I'm questioning the epistemic assumptions made there because you're saying in order for a metaphysical theory to have explanatory weight, it has to be under the purview of the natural sciences. But that's something the dualist already rejects. Right? So like the question is not so much what claims you make about the mind, it's more so what leads you to hold. The question is what leads you to hold to this kind of epistemology.
John, can I try and steelman what you're trying to say?
Sure.
Because Liv, what Strong is trying to say is like we can take and map the signals in your brain and see if you're thinking of a pink elephant. Like we're getting to the point where we can actually do that. So these thoughts are actual electromagnetic chemical reactions within a person's brain state. And so until you have a reason to show why they are more than that, then they don't belong in his model because he has no indication they're more than that, but he has indications that they are in fact that.
Yeah, but that's just a repetition of the claim, right? Like you've basically used the same epistemic model that I'm questioning in order
I was
to
steelmanning his
reiterate.
position. That's what I was doing.
Don't interrupt me. You're basically using the same epistemic model from which the critique was brought up in the first place, and then reasserting that claim by saying, okay, dualism fails to meet my epistemic standards of justification because it's not in the purview of natural sciences. Therefore, I think dualism is unjustified. But the question is, why build the model that you're using off of this like positivist view? Like, do you think that all claims that are justified are empirically justified?
I think I was simply steelmanning what he was saying in that one small segment.
Yeah, you did an adequate job to just like respond to the question. Are all claims that are justified also empirically justified?
Did you just try to ask the same question twice? Because you said it two different ways.
Yeah, I'm basically asking, are all justified claims also claims that are also empirically justified?
I'm not sure of any other way to justify a claim outside of empiricism.
Yeah, but that's incredulity, right? But I just gave you different ones at the beginning, right? There's like a conceptual problem here that wasn't addressed, but you hand waved it by saying, well, no, because science is the best way of figuring it out. And the thing is,
I didn't hear a jack shit about what you said in that part. So you might have
well,
to
you must
repeat
have
that.
come in later. Then you must have come in later. But there was a dialogue between Strong Atheist and I as to how he cashes out reference under his view, and all I heard was, okay, these things are neurocorrelates, and we have like all these findings in science, so we can hand wave all the metaphysical problems away. That's all I heard.
So, if there's no other examples of anything immaterial existing, doesn't that show a track record that we could use? That you
I
would
don't
have
know, like,
for you to
but
buck the
there
track
is
record.
examples. Like,
Well,
do you think that any type of like a priori reasoning wouldn't be an example of a mental state?
Okay, can you please give an example instead of describing what an example could be? Can you actually give an example? Because I wasn't part of that conversation, and I'm trying to
Well, yeah,
understand.
like I think phenomenal concepts are concepts about representations that agents have. So you could have a sensation, let's say pain, and Strong Atheist wants to say that pain equals like C fiber firings in the brain. And I would say, no, the mode of representation in the brain could be C fiber firings, but not the subjective experience, not how it's underlied conceptually. That would be the difference. And I could cast that out perfectly fine without holding to all this empiricist nonsense.
How would you do so?
I just gave you the. Were you listening? I just gave you a conceptual count. But I understand.
How do I distinguish? How can I distinguish what you just said, the difference between what you just said from imagination into reality? Like, how do I distinguish the difference between them outside of your assertion?
Yeah, how would
Right.
he?
So
How
do
would
you
he?
think
How would he?
do you think logical? Wait. So let me get this. Do you think logical arguments are just imaginary? Like when people give deductive arguments through like logical means, they're just like bullshitting.
Do I think they're bullshitting? No, but I think that in order for them to
Okay,
be
great. So what's
accepted
the
as
problem?
reality, there has to be a way
What's
to
the
distinguish them
okay?
between
Great.
imagination and reality.
Live
Okay,
for her
great. So
comment to be useful,
there's no
you'd actually have
bullshit
to be
involved
doing that.
when I give a deductive argument for
Can
something
you
that
let Oracle
isn't known
speak? He was
through
trying to say
empirical
something
means.
to you.
Right.
No,
So then
I'm just
I'm not bullshitting when I give you a deductive argument that doesn't run under the purview of your empirical means.
no. You're giving an
Right. I
inductive
can
argument.
perfectly give this conceptual argument without saying, okay, there's a posteriori natural evidence of immaterial states. Like, how am I supposed to do that? You're just asking for something impossible.
Yes, because you're working under different epistemologies.
Yeah, that's the point. So the argument wasn't more so the physicalist stuff. It's questioning why Strong Atheist has this epistemology.
This conversation. That's the point. The basic disagreement that everyone has on Discord. That's the point. Fucking kill me. Why are you bothering with this?
It all bottoms out to that. That's kind of why it's popular. You know, like I'm just saying Strong Atheist doesn't have a strong foundation to make those claims. Forget about the claims for a
I don't
second.
see the foundation you're trying to make a claim. Like, I need a
Or
way to be able to stop. I need a way to be able to distinguish imagination from reality.
Oh my
Okay.
god, T-jump, kill me. T-jumpism, kill me. But look, there is a way to
Right,
do
just
that.
because
You
one
could do
person
that.
says
You could
something
do that
doesn't mean
through
that's what the
logical.
fuck
You
it
could do
is.
that through logical reasoning. You could do that. So when someone gives logical reasoning for, let's say, why numbers exist, they give like some indispensability argument. Why do they have to show empirical evidence for anything? Why do they have to show empirical evidence for numbers existing if they wish to do so? For example.
He is very weird, yes, and he would have to do that. Yes, you're right. Good thing T-jump isn't here.
Do you think numbers are also physical? If you hold to their existence, do you think they're physical?
I think they are, and numbers are a language in which we use to describe the physical world.
Oh my god, this guy is just parroting every sentence. It's annoying. But look, okay, numbers are language.
Okay,
Numbers
fuck
are
you for
language.
stop telling me I'm parroting
Numbers are-
language. This is my honest opinion before I ever heard a fucking thing about T-jump.
Numbers, yeah. So numbers are a language that describes reality. And what sort of like, let's say, methodology are you using to arrive at that conclusion? How do you know? How do you know that numbers describe reality?
Because a rock You don't say one, you say one rock. You always say whatever. And so, like, when representing how math works, it is a description upon how the physical world works. Like, it's what physics and stuff are based off of is this language we use to describe it, and the language we use is mathematics.
Okay, but yeah, I understand like the view of like, okay, this is how we're using it given the conventional semantics. But the question is, how do you come to that conclusion that numbers are like describing what's actually happening? So in other words, you're not going to do this through empirical means. You're going to do this through non-empirical means. You're basically going to use a tool like language, as you just said.
Yeah, numbers are like numbers are language. Like languages don't actually exist.
Okay. So what does exist? All physical things exist? All wait, let me rephrase that. So all things that exist are physical under your view.
I didn't say that.
Okay, so tell me what meets the criteria of existence under your view? What does I don't know, when a proposition is true and it's like invoked by the speaker, does it have to refer to something physical necessarily, or could it refer to something non-physical?
What do you mean by non-physical?
Like it's not determined by, I mean, I can't give you like a really good definition, but it's something not like under the purview of the physical sciences.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking for an example, because being non-physical and existing is I don't understand that, so that's why I'm asking for clarification. If you can't clarify, then I have no reason to assume that
this
non-existent.
This is new atheist garbage. Like propositions, you would agree exist, right? Like statements, declarative statements. Let's say about the world. Do you think that those exist, right?
I mean, do they exist? Not in a proposition. I don't think exists outside of a conceptual idea, and I don't think that conceptual ideas are physical.
Okay, so
I do think they have a physical representation in a brain state.
Okay, conceptual ideas you think are non-physical, but conceptual. But conceptual.
Did you hear what I said at the end before you? Like you just cut me off at the end. So did you hear what I said at the end?
Hold on a second. Are conceptual ideas, do they exist?
Did you hear the last part of my statement after you cut me off?
Answer the question.
I did. If you listen to what I said before you cut me off.
Do conceptual ideas exist?
That's why I asked if you heard, because I answered this question before you cut me off.
Answer the question. Do conceptual ideas exist?
I think they are I think that they exist as physical representations of brain states.
But that's not what you said earlier, because what you said earlier was that they're not physical. You think that conceptual ideas are not physical, but now they're representative of physical states?
Okay, did everybody else hear me try to finish my statement before he cut me off, saying just what I just said?
Yeah, it was a bunch of contradictory nonsense. Like, look, either the thing. Okay, stop, little Matt Dillahunty. I'm going to teach you something here. Like when you
how about you stop with this fucking insulting bullshit?
Okay, then you can.
Bro,
leave,
you gotta grow
right?
up, man. If you're just
you really need to grow the fuck up, man.
You contradicted yourself, right? First, you
no, I didn't.
Ideas are non-physical, and now you're saying that those things are underlying physical properties.
No, I said the concepts themselves are not physical, but they are representative of physical brain states. That is what I said. There's nothing contradictory in that state.
Hold on. How can a non-physical concept represent a physical state?
Never non-physical.
How can a non-physical conceptual idea represent something that is underlying physical state?
Random. While I was here, did you say anything about brain states being non-physical?
Yeah, that's
no,
why
you
can't engage in philosophy.
The way it can happen is you could be happy. That speaks to a physical state in your brain. You've got serotonin and other hormones being released, but the state of happiness itself is abstract.
Yes,
Does that make
yes,
sense?
It's abstract.
yeah, I would
that's
agree
no
with you.
causal-
The abstract concept we have of it, yes, is abstract. I don't even agree with Random on this, and yet I understand his position way better.
Well, you're not in a position to say whether or not you understand something because
You don't
you're not
even know
you're not even aware of what the argument is. You're not
Yeah,
even
but no,
aware.
he
of what the
is,
argument
you're
is.
not.
Do you want to jump
You're
in? and
listening
say,
the whole
"Oh,
time.
You
no,
keep
I
fighting a straw
understand
man
that
because you
opinion."
keep not representing what I'm actually saying. You keep
You're just
representing
a
something
yelling
else.
you're just
Hold
a
on,
yelling
hold
mess.
on,
You're
Random.
just a hormonal teenager, right? So the
Hold on,
question,
hold on.
the
fucking
No,
question on the
it's not.
stupid,
table,
bitch.
Of
the
the two of you,
question on
Random
the
is the only one
table
that's
is,
making
hold
sense.
on, just be
I'm
civil
older
here.
than you are, you
Let's
immature little fucktard.
let's be civil here. So when
Yeah,
you
we
say
should begin.
when you say that there's a relation between the conceptual notions that a subject has and physical states, I'm asking what would be let's say a defeater, let's say some falsification criteria that makes this physicalist view that you have false. Like what
If
could
you could find,
possibly make the view false?
if you could find a concept that does not have a corresponding physical brain state that it represents, that would be a defeater from our argument.
You're starting out with physicalism. This is the point. This is the problem, right? You're starting off with the physicalist assumption that I'm denying. The question is, if I gave you a conceptual argument as to why mental states are not identical to physical states, why wouldn't that count as evidence? Why wouldn't a deductive argument that's not under the purview of empirical evidence, why is that not evidence? Hello?
Because your deductive
So,
argument would be representative of your physical brain state.
Sorry, say that again? That would be
Because your
representative
deductive
of a
argument
brain
would be a
state?
representation of your physical brain state as you
Yeah,
were
because
as you were
that's
conceiving
just
it.
reasserting physical. Look, you're just reasserting physicalism. The question is like, why? If I gave you a deductive argument, why wouldn't that like lend more credence to dualism if it happened to be sound than non-dualism or like physicalism?
all right, if I can jump in here, right?
Go ahead,
Like
Or.
I don't
Yeah,
understand. Like
no,
like
no, no, no,
if you
no.
think that all evidence has to be
Oh
empirical,
my
like no one could give you any sort of justification that's not under the realm of the empirics that
Let
you're
me know when
asking
you're done,
for,
buddy.
then you're just dumb. Like I don't know how to.
Yeah,
Do
let me
you
know when
think
you're done.
like logic, like logical rules are also empirical?
Okay, so
I think they are
if you
descriptions of the physical world.
Random, he's trying to get you to talk, so I can't talk. That's literally what he's trying to do.
Sorry, go ahead, Or.
Yeah. So I've been here for a good portion of time. If all you're going to do is just rabble and not deal with the problem at all, that I acknowledged very early on that was your problem, you're dancing around the problem. You're obfuscating the entire time, and then you're insulting Random. And by proxy, you've also been doing that to Strong. If this is how you're conducting yourself, why on earth should anyone take you seriously?
Oh, because I know
Because
more than
this
you
is
and
how
I'm
you
a
don't.
better debater than you. But the point
No, you're
is,
not.
look, I'm simply
I
making
haven't
this
insulted you
argument
one
that
bit.
is going through your head,
And you
and all you can
also have.
respond
I'm
to
just gonna
is
lower
like
you because I wasn't
empiricist
done talking.
bullshit. I'm
So
asking.
you also have this
I'm at
really
look,
bad
look,
habit of over talking
Dragon,
people.
Somebody
Dragon
stop
Boy,
me
And I
from
don't know. I
microphone
don't
every
know
time they
why.
talk.
Yeah, I
Dragon
don't know
Boy,
why you have this
Dragon
semblance
Boy,
to overtalk
Dragon
people.
Boy. I'm
And you know,
asking the
one day you're
question,
gonna
right?
find someone who is just gonna overtalk you just like me because I absolutely have the means and capacity to overtalk you, not hear what you're saying or care what you're saying, by the way, and still be completely within the rules because I can hear you and I do know when you're talking. I just simply don't care. Which is
Okay,
within
I'm
the
back.
rules, by the
Okay,
way.
then don't engage, right? Like the
I
point
am
is,
engaging with you
why
because
if
this
I
is how
gave
you've
you
been
a
acting the entire
successful
time.
deductive
And
if I
I'm
give
going
you
to
a
treat you
successive
exactly as
deductive
you have been needed to be treated this entire time.
if I
And
gave
now
you a
that Tomcat's
successful
back,
deductive
I am
argument, why
absolutely
wouldn't
fine with
that count
backing
as
down on this.
Please, one at a time.
if I gave you a successful deductive argument for dualism, why wouldn't that count as evidence?
Is that to me or to Random? Because I
To this
literally am just.
random guy, I know you're not able to engage.
Well, I am engaging, but I actually probably would agree with you, unfortunately, because your argumentation's fucking awful.
Okay, I don't care about your opinion. I'm just asking this random guy.
What are you asking?
There? Yeah, so if there's a successful deductive argument for dualism, why wouldn't that count as evidence?
I never said it would.
No, but you just said earlier that it wouldn't because it would be just a representation of my brain state, which doesn't make any sense. Because when I give an argument for position, I'm underlying the reasons as to why you should accept them. It has nothing to do with like representations in the brain. So again,
are you refuting my point that a concept, because my claim here, the only claim I'm defending here, is that concepts are non-physical, but they are representative of the physical brain state.
Well,
That is my claim.
If you say concepts are non-physical, then congratulations, you're a dualist, right? Because
No, I'm not.
because the physicalist position is that if concepts are mental objects and mental objects are identical to physical states, then concepts can't be non-physical under that view. But if you're saying that they are, if you're saying that concepts are non-physical, then congratulations, you're a dualist.
No. I'm saying they
No.
are representations of physical brain states, meaning that fundamentally they are in fact physical.
Oh my God, this guy. Look, yeah, concepts are representational items, right? They're mental items. Now, if you think that those are non-physical, then that's just like the dualist claim. The dualist is claiming that they're non-physical. The dualist is claiming that they're non-physical. So if you're saying concepts are non-physical, then you're just, okay, you're agreeing with my position.
No, concepts themselves do not exist in the regards to they are just representations of physical brain states.
Wait, how can something that doesn't exist not have a representation of something?
We
Like
describe the physical brain states of what the brain is doing, and we call it concept.
No, a concept is a mental item, right? It like exists in a subject's mind, right? It exists, right? Now you could say,
you
well,
said
the
mental.
name,
He said brain. You're saying the same thing.
right? So I'm saying concepts are mental representations, and you're saying that these things are used to describe brain states. But if the concepts themselves are non-physical, then that's just enough for dualism to be true.
No, I'm saying they are representations of physical brain states.
Yeah, and guess what? A dualist can agree with that as long as you think that they're non-physical, because a concept is just representing that state.
I think that they themselves are what we call the physical brain states. We call that physical brain state a conception.
No, look, a brain state is just the physical stimuli, the physical states, right, in the brain, the neurocorrelates. But if you're saying the concepts represent that, but that the concepts are non-physical, that's compatible with dualism. A dualist can agree with that and say, look, yeah, the concepts are non-physical, and nevertheless they correlate to some neurons.
Yeah, no, dualist would say that the concept exists separate from the brain state, and I'm saying no, they don't.
That's like saying they're non-physical. Yeah, it's like saying they're non-physical.
They don't exist. They are themselves. They are the exact, like they are the brain state. The brain state we are describing here is the concept. The concept is the brain state.
Yeah, this is just garbage, right? Because if concepts are representational, if concepts are, let's say, about certain experiences that an agent has, then how is that going to be identical to like physical states that are public, right? That are like easily observable. Like, how is the qualitative state that someone has, which is private, how is that identical to a public physical state?